construction, gaming, trading, you name it. We're covering the whole spectrum. And I can cover any aspects of that you want. It's just a case of maybe for your tribe to just know that there's access points for us to be able to provide anybody on different levels, from very, very beginning basics, how do you set up a wallet, what is blockchain, all the way through to the sophistication of tokenomics and asset leverage, being your own bank, organizing your own cash flows, and everything in between. So we've worked hard at DBM just to simply facilitate that, what I call a conveyor belt of knowledge. And we've even figured out how to do it for free at the beginning, because that's how much we feel that it needs to be known in the world. And then there's no barriers. And then it's just a process of education, realization, and action. And what you're alluding to, Jay, with the D.AI.SY project is just one of many, many different blockchain factories that we operate, all of which have little machines in them that are creating permanent cash flow for us. And we just live off the proceeds every single month. And we teach hundreds, probably thousands of people now to do that all over the world, which is pretty awesome, to use one of those Canadian parlances.
You got a lot of Canadians in the house. We've got a couple of Americans. We've got some people from Amsterdam and Portugal. We've got Colombians and Chileans, and we're like, it's awesome. Yeah, we've gone super, super global. Why I wanted to have you on the call right away is because the last couple of times we've spoken, and then when I've been on the course, the Digital Business Masters offering, that, by the way, I'm enjoying immensely. It's interesting, as someone who's been in this for a while, to kind of go back to basics and to, because, you know, I never really got the basics. You know, there wasn't a Sean Moloney, you know, holding my hand, that's for sure. We just got thrown into the fire. And it was like drinking from the fire hose, and it was, you know, you sink or swim, really. That's kind of what it felt like at the time. It was pretty hard and fast when I entered the crypto world. And in the last 3 years, how much it's evolved and the mass adoption that's occurring, you know, it's almost like two different worlds from 3 years ago to now. So what I'm really wanting the folks in our tribe to connect in with you on is, and you know, I sent you a message after that one DBM call, and I said, you know, you're like painfully practical, meaning that, you know, for people that are trying to wrap their head around how to get in this game, how to get some skin in the game, but do it in a way that's reasonable, where there's a map and there's step 1 and step 2, and you lay it all out for people with the building blocks and the frameworks and the structures, because otherwise it feels like you're hitting the highway at 250. You know, that's what most people feel like. Their cheeks are flapping in the wind. It can be very overwhelming. So I really want to break it down for people from a place of your perspective and how you've come as you've grown in this evolution into DeFi and fintech and all the wonderful big words that we're going to dismantle and demystify today for people. And then how they can on-ramp, and maybe what types of projects a lot of people, depending on where their riskometer is, right? Whether they're like low to no risk, or whether they've got a lot of crypto and they want to maybe play with it a little bit more at a higher level. And I know that sounds like a lot, but the way Sean breaks it down, this is not his first rodeo.
Oh.
Sean is an entrepreneur extraordinaire, and he runs Digital Business Masters. So in the show notes here, we're going to put all the different ways that you can access Sean and his course and his information and all the amazing things that he's doing. He has a lot of coaches and people on his team, and I believe you're doing them daily now. You're making offerings daily through DBM. Yeah.
All the coaches are live. We've got about, at the moment, 14 coaches live daily in all time zones. We're now just building out Spanish. We're building out French and Dutch. So it's very collaborative. We have a model, and what a lot of the individuals that we've nurtured over the years, who've been in my inner circles and the you know, so-called leaders inside these networks, they've realized that they've got a lot to give, because as Jay says, that we've been through a lot. My background started in 2008. I made that fatal error of putting myself 100% into the pockets of the banks. Didn't realize it then, but looking back on it, that's what happened. He rocked up onto my my premises one day and said, "Sean, I'm sorry, we're going to have to pull down some credit lines." Why? Because we've messed our balance sheets up. We've not heard the news. They haven't heard the news. What's it got to do with me? Well, we're not able to do what we said we're going to do, and your 5-year plan is dead. So we ended up having to lay people off. We had to change things around, and I thought, this is crazy. Never going to let that happen again. Didn't know what to do. I spent 2 or 3 years trying to figure it out, and then we tripped up over Bitcoin. Thought it was a scam. Didn't understand it. Really had no comprehension of its power, because we didn't understand the technology it was built on. Just thought it was an alternative currency, and we didn't understand the dangers of fiat currency back then. We didn't understand the difference between currency and money. No concept of that. And then very quickly we did. We started to study and realize that there was a big difference between currency and money. And the big difference is one of protected purchasing power. Many of you guys who've come through the route with Jay talking about gold and sound money and all those types of realizations understand that. And then it didn't take me long to figure out that, okay, well, if that's the case, then how can we leverage into asset classes that have some sort of limited supply, and how can we liquidate into those types of assets? And that's when I started to understand Bitcoin. I started to realize that it was actually an infrastructure. It was actually a means of immutable exchange. And that's when we went big. And then we moved, this is back 2016. And the rest really is history, because we were sort of then immune to all the buffeting that was going on at that point. You had all the big institutions, Jamie Dimon famously saying, "Oh, don't touch that, it's a scam," and all the rest of it. We were watching this going on at the same time as understanding what the fundamentals were of the technology itself. Nothing to do with Bitcoin. It was to do with Bitcoin being the world's first manifestation of immutable supply. So that was interesting to watch. By then, we were getting involved, and that's how Jay and I met, through projects that were attempting at that point to bring blockchain liquidity onto sound money, in other words, gold. That is still being born around us. That is trying to be born. It's like a real problem birth. That thing is trying, but it's a very difficult, challenging market. So by then, we understood that we could leverage into other projects on the blockchain. Even then, we were probably touching around 20 odd different projects. These days, it's 50 odd different blockchain-based projects that we leverage, or coins actually, that we leverage into projects and platforms. So it was just a real rocket of maneuverability that allowed us to build balance sheets that I could never have dreamt of in bricks and mortar. And we had global demand, and we were able to pick on all sorts of different things in all sorts of ways that either we had an instinctive belief in, like education, or the unbanked, power redistribution, property, gold, obviously. And more recently, we've been able to leverage into the phenomenon that is monetizing everyday activities, like browsing on the internet, or education, or gaming. So now we're earning cash flows every day, not just from the coin values appreciating, which is one of the principles that most people first get drawn to, is this idea that, oh, let's go and buy a coin and hopefully it'll go to the moon and all that stuff. There's much more to it than that. You've got to put those coins to work. You've got to start to drive the use case. You've got to understand the process of real value, not price. Nothing to do with price. Everything's to do with value. Once the value gets cemented, you've got demand over fixed supply, then you get the price. So there's a million and one things that come to the fore once you understand that. And what's been amazing over this past 12 months, hand in glove with this episode of history, has been how more and more people, mainly institutional level, so what we call smart money, is starting now to make moves. And that's what you're seeing in Bitcoin particularly. What I'm fascinated about next, Jay, is where will all that Bitcoin liquidity go next? That's what I'm really interested in. So we're ahead of the smart money at that point. So I sort of encapsulated in about 5 minutes.
Getting ahead of the smart money is smart. We're really focusing on this in a lot of ways through our Changemaker movement, getting ahead of the market and having the insight to be able to see what's coming around the bend. And that requires, a lot of looking at the different projects and really keeping your finger on the pulse. And so a lot of people, what have you been up to, Jay? What's going on in your world? And it's just been that like geeking out at such an extraordinary level of what's going on in the space, because once you're hooked on the space, and a lot of people can't understand my obsession with it, because it has become an obsession at this point, because I do believe that this decentralized shift of power and redistribution of wealth has the power to change the way that we live and work and do business at such extraordinary levels. It's really hard to comprehend. I just wrote a post and put it in our CryptoTribe THRIVEHUB Facebook group, talking about the power of blockchain and how it's actually more powerful than the invention of the internet itself, which is really hard for people to wrap their heads around because the internet has been such a disruptive technology. So I really want people to hear from you, not from the practical, systems framework side of you, which you're so good at and so good at conveying that and laying that roadmap out for people, but why, at a personal level, you and I, we have kids. We've spoken at a deeper level about the Changemaker movement and why this is so fascinating to you beyond the monetary level of it or the understanding of the blockchain and some of the nuts and bolts.
Yeah, I mean, it's just empowerment. The only word is empowerment. I mean, forget the blockchain, forget the opportunity, forget the leverage and all the technicals that come along with, frankly, being your own bank. All you've got to do is open your front door and just have a look at how many people are disenfranchised, how many people are feeling browbeaten and feeling that, but not knowing what to do about it. And all you have to do is take a little look under the hood of what monetary history is. And that's why we talk about books such as Creature from Jekyll Island, G. Griffin, documentary series like Hidden Secrets of Money by Mike Moloney.
Brilliant.
Or Can't Get You Out of My Head by Adam Curtis. I mean, if you start to absorb that level of history not told through the looking glass of a curriculum, then you start to really see how you're being played. And it's not a yellow vest, hanging off Nelson's collar, rioting in the street type of anger. It's a protest. It's a much smarter protest than that. It's us empowering every single household through what I call financial education, so that you can start to make maneuvers inside immutable, unchanging collectivism. And once people understand that, you're able to take that certainty as an individual and start to build into it. So Adam Curtis talks about this in Can't Get You Out of My Head. This offset in the last 60 years since the war of collectivism being experimented with in China and Russia, and individualism being experimented with in Western Europe and the Americas, and how neither has been successful. Collectivism very much pushed people down for the benefit of a few. Individualism gave the impression that it was letting people be empowered, but in fact, it's left the vast majority of millions of people feeling very lonely and disenfranchised. And one of the first ways that we came across trying to figure out how to prevent that was Prozac. So the whole thing has just been wrapped up in a tangle of confusion and ultimately it's disenfranchisement. And all we do, Jay, is overlay a roadmap from 1971 to where we are today in a fiscal manner, so that people can see how certain decisions that were made in that 40 years all my lifetime and longer, that have created a reality today that arguably is not serving the majority. In fact, we know it's not. Why are
Death by a
suicide
thousand
rates?
cuts. It's death by a
Death by a thousand
thousand
cuts, yeah. And, it's not the sky's falling in ever.
Mm-hmm.
It's never about, woe I am, blaming other people. Yeah, lots of people have been very successful, and you can be successful too. But what I've learned to do, and people say to me all the time, Sean, do you employ people? Not anymore. We empower people, because to get out there and create a ecosystem based on certainty is giving us, and we're proof of it, many people we deal with these days, is an absolute foundation of something that we can build on. And everything we do in any sector of life that we find that blockchain has relevance in, which is basically everything, it's the internet of money, is giving us all these ways to keep stepping up. And not really about them. That's obviously something necessary for you to be able to do this full time or do it in a way of deep immersion. You need to feed the kids. But beyond that, it's then how many people you're able to touch. Value, education, realization, and action. And we just build that as hard and as fast as we possibly can, occasionally leveraging platforms and projects on which to create a greater good. And that's exactly what we do. And there's some amazing ways we're doing that now with charitable type infrastructures. We're involved with projects whereby you can create a wallet, hold the seed word, put $100 in there into a use case that has value and validity and technological relevance, and just leave that $100 like a seed in a plant pot. We have plant pots all over the field, covered by a greenhouse, just letting them be born. And then as they come through, we watch them and monitor them, and then become saplings. And when they become saplings, we take them out of the greenhouse and we gift them to charities or churches or students, or one of the ultimate visions is pushing against this food bank phenomenon by giving people access to financial education at the point they're going through the food bank. That's what they really want. Mm-hmm. But these little saplings of growth, which in the event mean us giving them the wallet and the seed words that's already plugged into an infrastructure that's creating natural cash flow, rather than that be just taken by the person, obviously they can go ahead and then just get educated about why it's doing that. And we see that as a much more beneficial means of charitable action than dropping fiat currency onto them, hoping they're going to spend it in a way that helps them to sustain their life. Give them a function of the blockchain that's actually growing because of the value of what it's based on, and it turns into an oak. So we're literally handing these out across the world through immutable blockchain. The dynamic that people fail to fully appreciate just yet is why that is happening. How could it be that you could take a seed to a sapling and expect that to grow? Because they don't have the concept yet of understanding what it is the value is about in the technology or the use of it. But it doesn't stop us filling warehouses full of seeds, because it's those in time that will grow, and it's irrefutable growth. It's not like, oh, come and buy my stuff, come and buy my pack, because this is going to get you into a network, you're going to earn some commissions, go and talk to 100 people. That takes you so far, but it's passé these days. It's almost outdated. It's a case of you giving someone a sapling that's already going to grow, and then that proof of itself helps somebody else to do the same thing and grow their own saplings. So a church leader, for example, would take the first sapling, he'd watch that grow, and then rather than going around with a cap every congregation every Sunday, getting people to put in what they can to keep the community together, everybody gets a sapling. And that's what I call the new social welfare. It's a means of everybody being connected on an immutable technology that underneath it all is a value that's valuable to the world, but every individual takes a little sapling and grows it. And that's the power of it, Jay. And it's putting a question mark against certainly the petrodollar. It's putting a question mark against foreign aid, question mark against charity itself, charities that have become corporations as opposed to true driven solutions. Let's face it, if they were as good as they should be, would we still have 2.8 billion people unbanked? Would we have a situation where we've got destitution and higher suicide rates and millennials with lower expectations of life than their baby boomer grandparents? If it was working, it'd be working. It isn't working. So we've got to get out there and change it. And these steps into education and blockchain certainty are part of that process.
Let's talk about this guy.
Yeah, that's a great example. It's a gateway.
This is a gateway. I want to talk about this a little bit because, you know, what you're speaking into, we could do a whole segment on that, and I would love to be honest. Yeah. So let's bookmark that, because that is such a valuable conversation that needs to be had and that people need to be aware of. I think for the first time in my lifetime, certainly, you know, we've seen things get worse, not better, when we have all the technology and all of the resources in order to care for the people on our planet. And when you see starving children being, you know, the worst, I think, expression of our falling down, humanity falling down, not caring for our children. And then we put technology into the hands of people in the form of seedlings through empowerment and education with the ability to rise. And I don't see that it has to take a big lift. And this is an extremely exciting conversation to me, because it's something that can be passed on and can be seen in action right now. This is not something that's happening in the future. This is happening now.
We're doing it. Yeah, we're doing it.
So I commend you, and I'm really excited for us to get involved with you at that level. Now, we've got people who, you know, are starting to, you know, put one foot in. Other people, when we, like us, we've got both feet in. Something like this is a game changer. You know, we're moving more and more towards mass adoption. And for people to be able to pull out a card with Visa on it, where they can spend their crypto, this is really revolutionary to a lot of people. So let's just talk a little bit about what this can do for people, this type of access, and how it's changed so rapidly in the last couple of years.
No, it really has changed rapidly. And this is a great objective tool that is real. I mean, we have memes that we send out to our platforms. This is can't see it because of my green screen, but that's Santander. Okay, Santander, big Spanish bank, very big in the UK. Could be Bank of America, could be Bank of Ireland, could be Deutsche Bank. Doesn't matter. Any standard commercial bank that people are led to believe is their only option, which is the first thing you've got to understand, is why is that the case? Big part of what we do on the course, as you know, Jay, when I'm doing this, is we don't talk about blockchain until you understand how dangerous these things are in eating up your future purchasing power. Incredibly dangerous. And only getting worse, I'm sad to say, because of the nature of experiments like quantitative easing. And now we've got repos going on, and we've got the ability, anytime they like, to create bail-ins. And this isn't an accident. All this stuff is designed to protect the status quo. So
bail-ins, just to touch in on a bail-in. Bail-in laws allow the authorities that be to go into your bank accounts and take the money that's in the bank accounts. And this is, you'd be shocked at actually how many times it's happened and how close we are to that potential reality. Quantitative easing is the printing of money shamelessly. I think last year, the amount of quantitative easing was obscene. I think it accounts for something like 33% of the entire amount in total. So it's literally to the point of obscene. So when you talk about purchasing power, we're talking about the ability for our hard-earned money to be able to hold its value, to continue to purchase the same thing now that it purchased before or in the future. And so that's why we love gold. But we're starting to see a real shift into people understanding that Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, and that is a new form of holding purchasing power. And I think that's harder for people to understand, Sean, because it seems so volatile. It seems so, it's like you're riding a roller coaster. How could that possibly be something secure for our funds at this stage in the volatility?
Right. Ironically, a Bitcoin over the past year or so has been much more stable than the stock market, and this is the thing. It's perception management in the end, and people are only aware of what they think they know, and there's a whole conversation about media and curriculum and parenting and all sorts of stuff in there. But you don't need to go that far, that deep. You just need to take a good look at where you are today. And the best way to predict the future is, first of all, to create it. But the second best way is to understand where we've been, take a bearing on where you are, and then navigate to where you want to be. And all we do is use blockchain as a tool. That's all it is. It's a tool. Don't look at blockchain as, oh, I'm buying that coin, I'm hoping the price will go up. All this Bitcoin stuff you hear on the mass medias, it's Bitcoin's going to this, Bitcoin's going to that. It's got nothing to do with it. You've got to get down to the core of what the value is, and then let the market come to you. So all we do is, as I said earlier, isolate projects and coins and platforms that feed that end. And all these little things do, I've got a blue one, is they provide us with an ability to interface between our own asset, equity, key, never spend your principal, work with your equity, or better still, put that equity to work so that you're creating interest, which is what you really live off. Yeah. And these platforms, such as Crypto.com, and there's many, many others, allow you to seamlessly move between your own asset growth. In other words, you become your own broker, your own lender, your own money manager, your own insurance company, you become your own, liquidity provider. You're doing everything yourself on the blockchain. And you simply learn how to place that into position so that it's creating positive cash flow week over week, month over month, quarter over quarter. And that's what we specialize in at DBM, is teaching people how to do that. And then all these cards do is give you the ability, like we do, genuinely, I still do it to this day, every single Friday. We do an inventory of where we're at compared to where we were the previous Friday. I take a little bit of that off the top, and which means basically liquidating cash flow, liquidating interest, and sometimes equity. Depends how expensive the wife is feeling that particular weekend. we then get out there and we live our lives off that. And at that point, you are your own bank. Now, these fiat, they call fiat gateway platforms, are much smarter than that actually these days as well, because what you're able to do, and Crypto.com is a classic right now, they've just opened up the staking and DeFi services of that platform. Mm-hmm. So you no longer even need, which is crazy, you no longer even need to work with your own principal anymore. You can simply put into action over 30, 60-day periods, various different coins that you deploy as collateral basically for other people to use. So the big one they've just brought out today, actually, as it happens, is Engine Coin, which is a big NFT platform. And at the moment, that's now able to be left as collateral inside that system for 21% interest.
NFTs, gang, are called non-fungible tokens.
Right.
More on that later.
Well, that's a big so, and it's just coincidental that Engines come about onto Crypto.com, to be honest, at this point in time, because NFTs have been in the news a lot recently with Kings of Leon and what's going on with sports clubs and other things. Manchester City here, which is my local club down here, are moving heavily into NFTs. So you're going to hear a lot more about that. But the point is that we anticipate that and we let the market come to us by us putting ourselves in front of these platforms, and not just allow us ownership of the coin. Mm-hmm. They always allow us to put the coin. They also allow us to put the coin to work to create daily returns that we then use to live our life. So Basically, Jay, debit cards and credit cards in our house are banned. The kids, even now, have their own asset portfolios. We don't give pocket money in, and we don't give our kids the sense that, oh, wash the car, I'll give you $10 or £10. No way. My kids won't be taught to exchange time for money. We provide them with assets. If you read a book, they learn something new, they win something, they do something constructive, they behave themselves, which would be a novelty. We give them some assets, and then they come to me, say, Daddy, look at my portfolio. Yeah, we're using words like that. Yeah, I don't know if you guys have used a platform called Blockfolio. Blockfolio is a neat little app that even our youngest kids, Jay, you've met Joseph, and you know, they
Ella.
and well, Ella's a bit older now. She's just about to go off on her first trip to Ibiza or wherever she's going to go. She's 17. So if she's anything like I was when I was 17, that's not to be something to build towards. But she's basically funded that whole trip on her Ethereum.
Brilliant.
She's had Ethereum at work for her for many years, and that's the point in the end. You know, they've learned, and we enjoy teaching this to millennials as much as we can pin them down. It's like herding cats. But if we can get them just to understand concepts of being able to put this to work and then living with these, and not trying to feed these into their life. That's why I'm a big one of my pet hates is student loans, for that obvious reason, is they're just being fed to the wolves. We're involved with projects that now allow people to get paid to learn from 8 years of age. They're able then to create a timed wallet that allows them to hold assets that they accumulate over learning, maths, English, geography, over 10 years till they're 18. And by the time they get to 18, they've got a pot of Ripple or whatever. What will Ripple be worth 10 years from now? So this is all about much deeper education and leverage than most people recognize.
Talk about an idea whose time has come.
Right.
Now let's switch gears to drive it, don't ride it. Because this is such a different concept for people who are used to taking their money, putting it into the bank, and that's, you know, that's done. When you talk about influencing our assets, you know, the ability to drive asset classes, to have an active role in what our equity is doing. This is a game changer for people when they start to realize they don't have to sit back. We have a lot of, and this is where the empowerment comes in. We have a lot of influence on our assets in this space. To me, that's a game changer. I love your saying, drive it, don't, no, am I saying it right? Drive it, don't ride it.
Drive it, don't ride it.
Right? Okay, I've got it right.
Exactly. I mean, anybody on here run a business or have a business? Any chance of riding that and hoping everything will work out? No chance. It's no different in this space. If you decide to take responsibility for your balance sheet, ultimately is what it is, like any good business, you better drive that thing hard. You better make sure that you're balancing every single day. Otherwise you're out of business. So the whole thing is just like a global network of that concept. And what I said earlier about the pace with which you can build a balance sheet compared to a bricks and mortar traditional business where you own a job. Yeah, nothing wrong with that. Anybody read Cash Flow Quadrant by Rich Dad by Kiyosaki?
Kiyosaki.
If you have, great. If you have, read it again, but with this broader knowledge, and you'll see how quickly you can move to a business systematization function in your life from your own kitchen table, and you can create assets that go and put money to work for you. Now that's the driving bit. So in technical terms, this is called tokenomics, combination of tokens with economics. And we drive the two things together. And in simple terms, it means owning, so we own the coin. It means using, so we use the services of the blockchain the coin is based on. And we endorse, in other words, we help demand by helping, like I'm doing right now. People understand why the hell they would want to own a Crypterium card, yeah? Or a Crypto.com card, whatever. So that is the point. As soon as you get into that mind frame of ownership, you watch how difficult it is for you not to drive.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the problem most people have is that they have this deep, long-standing assumption that a boss, a bank, or a government will look after them. And it's very difficult to shake that off for most people. 95% of people in the world are employed. That's not an accident. It's come from the Industrial Revolution. It's come from people's assumption that somebody else will provide them with a means of existence based on their energy or skill. And in the end, when you want to take control of this at the point where people are pushed to such disenfranchisement in existence, 50 years after the issuance of full floating fiat, which I think we're at now, if you understand the epochs that go on, from the Dutch to the Portuguese to the Spanish to the British and now the American epoch of financial imperialism, you'll realize they last about 100 years. So we're 120 years into the American epoch. So it's got to buckle at some point, and all we're doing is putting ourselves in front of that broad macro realization and then using technology to put individuals in front of the next alternative that will at least protect you in the near term, particularly when it comes to purchasing power, but when done well, can also give you a lift to your ability to cash flow. And when you understand that, it sheds away all the speculation, all the need to suddenly go out and buy a lottery ticket, go and buy Bitcoin because somebody said, your brother-in-law is always the guy who knows everything, isn't it? And it's a case of you shedding off that assumption and turning it into assertion because you've gone and done the research, you've gone and done the yards of education that are necessary. And in the end, it becomes very difficult not to drive.
The education takes on an active, you become an active participant in the creation of your abundance.
Right.
And I've seen it be a game changer for people, but you're right. People are quite resistant. I'm not quite as diplomatic as you are. I encourage people to jump off the Titanic,
Right.
It's sinking, I'm far more dramatic about it. You're very practical about it, but I appreciate that about you because you're playing the long game and you meet people where they're at. And I appreciate that about you. Let's talk about the lift of a coin like Ren that you've recently brought to my attention. So I've researched it a little bit. It's fascinating to me. These types of projects now, admittedly, when I first got into this whole world, it was because we'd, lost everything in a hurricane in Mexico. I was pregnant with my third child and we crash landed back in Canada in a terrible financial position. And it was a huge awakening. And so I started asking a lot of questions and getting that education. And that's when I started saving in gold and getting silver and starting to learn about hidden secrets of money. And the journey began. And the more I unraveled what I thought I knew, the more I realized that I knew very little. And I consider myself quite educated. It was shocking to me. Now we flip to the other side, the inversion of that. You've got people around the world. How many countries have we got in the world now? Like 178 or something like that. I think the statistics, if memory serves, I'm slightly off, but close enough. I think it's about 79, 80 countries approximately. Correct me if I'm wrong, if anyone actually knows or can Google that at the moment. But I know it's a very high number of people who cannot get bank accounts, referred to as the unbanked. For me, being a woman, I know a lot of women in multiple different countries who I'm close with through working in gold and new finance, new economy, who I've met who said, I simply can't get a bank account. And this is a game changer for them. So I just want to light up that board for a minute, because that's a whole other, again, that's a whole other, episode, so to speak. But I just want to hear from you, because obviously if you're putting that on our radar, it's because it's brought meaning to you as well.
Right. So, yeah, we'll put this down as the last one, Jay, because I've got your course coming up in about 10 minutes. So, yeah, it's a big one. And it's too big to fathom. I mean, it's just way too big to fathom. It's like, how do you eat an elephant, And often charity does start at home, and it's what gives us that idea with regards to empower households. Now, Ironically, I spend most of my time on calls like this talking to people thousands of miles away from where I currently reside. But at the same time, it's while we're building outwards from our location, people are building inwards, and so the whole thing gets wrapped. But the sad truth is that the vast majority of the communication that we're having, like we are today, is with first world problems. It's people with first world problems. So there are lots of ways that we're handling this, and it is a process of time, because there's risk. There's things that have to be understood. It's like people who got first involved with, e-commerce. It led to the dot-com bubble back in the 1990s. It feels a bit like that, and you've just got to be a little bit careful with how that's proceeding. Not least with which, because the petrodollar, which is weaponized, is very difficult to pin down through legislation, regulation. Especially, it's got to be said in the US with the SEC. But at the end of the day, there are many, many ways to do it. And what I prefer to do personally is, look, we do this a lot with solar panel technologies in South Africa. There's many ways to do this. In the end, the biggest issue with the unbanked isn't really about access to a bank as we know it. It's access to a means of exchange between people. And that, with the internet technologies we now live in, ironically, is best served if you can literally empower people with power. So we lay down infrastructures, we capitalize solar panel farms with capital in the form of Ethereum onto smart contracts that then provide me with the confidence through the smart contract to the company. The company that I'm talking about here is a company called Sun Exchange. Okay, it's based out in South Africa. As a person in the West with a first world problem of not getting enough interest return from my traditional capital deployment, I can use the same capital reserves to go and push a project or contribute to a project that puts solar panels in villages and towns that really don't have any access to much at all. That gives them then the ability to start to get power. All they then do is get laptops and plug in the children to the schools and everything else and the infrastructure. Right. And the village blossoms. Now, what do I get out of that? Well, because of the smart contract, every time the sun shines, which apparently it does a lot in South Africa, I get paid. So we're just basically monetizing the sun as a return. But my part in that is to place some capital into a community that would have been overlooked or is being overlooked. It gives me access directly to a community that we can do something about that's totally circumvents so-called foreign aid or any unscrupulous government that isn't doing what it should be doing inside that particular population. So that's just one way we do it, Jay. So it's not what you might think. It's not how do we solve the problem of unbanked. It's getting underneath it and saying, well, let's empower people so they don't have to be unbanked.
Brilliant. I'm going to do one quick speed round before you have to go. Top fave projects, platforms, coins. Just throw a couple up there that you're super just jazzed about. Look at this face. Anything juicy for us? I mean, I know Daisy's a big one. I mean, Daisy's launching right now. Do you want to do a quick sum up to leave people with a little nugget? What do you want to leave people with?
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, there's multiple ways that people feed into these value propositions. And I promise you, I've got no great, the network world is necessary, but it leaves itself with a problem because it tends to oversell and underdeliver. In the blockchain space, I prefer to call it peer-to-peer. Okay, so like I've just spent the last hour with you guys explaining some fundamentals of value. You've got to understand the value, you've got to understand the use case. And then if you understand that on the blockchain with smart contracts with a phenomenon called Crowdfund 2.0, Then you start to understand how everything connects. So you've got technology, you've got a real use case that's relevant. In other words, a means of people being able to instantly access trade capital as opposed to leaving it in a 401k or a pension fund for 40 years, hoping somebody else is making the good of that. And all they're doing is flushing around fees in between the middle of it all and making themselves wealthy, and you get what's left. If you know that's a problem, then is there a platform in this auspices of blockchain that gives you an opportunity to do something a bit different? Now, I don't know how those things play out in the future. I don't know if it's a golden goose. All I know is that it's something to be investigated. And then when you combine technology and real use case with network, then all of a sudden you end up with these accelerators. I call them cash flow accelerators. And we're in the middle of one right now. In fact, it goes live in about 2 hours from where I'm sat right now. And we've just spent the last 3 or 4 months building up hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of syndications. Why have we done it like that? Well, because to achieve that maximum cash flow individually, when you're talking $100,000 with another 24 people underneath or $128,000, doing that on your own is tough. Mm-hmm. Doing it as a syndication where everybody contributes on a smart contract means that you do get access to that cash flow. And that's very much what we're going to turn out in the next couple of hours. Now, is it too late? Of course it's not too late. You never get involved with something because somebody said. You get involved with something because somebody's told you exactly what it is in value terms, and you've watched it happen. And that's just a process of time and discovery. Never get involved with anything, especially when there's a network involved. That means, oh, come and buy that, come and get this coin's going to the moon, come and buy this package, come and do this, just because the network and the marketers are saying that. The marketers oftentimes don't understand what it is they're selling. But they're very good at convincing the people, because most people are on their uppers because they've got more month than money. And frankly, they get quite desperate. Don't be that person. Come back to basics. That's why we set up the free academy, Jay. People can come in and get access every single day in every single time zone for all this knowledge for free, with all these coaches we have, and just move through a conveyor belt of awareness and then come in for the right reasons. So we're just at that point with one particular project called D.AI.SY, and my job isn't to say, oh, quick. My job is to say, realize why we do it, track what we do, and then see how it is, so that you can say, actually, that makes a lot of sense. We no longer sell opportunity and talk about opportunity and put people in a place of expectation. What we do is we prove products and services that actually have validity, so that you can convert energy and effort into equity that pays you cash flow. So that's really what it is. And we do it across multiple different projects, Jay. This just happens to be the one that we're driving at this quarter.
Brilliant. Well, I'm ready to saddle up my horse. I've been watching for a while. I'm much more, I've always, I'm one of those people, I get excited, but I've gotten better at pulling the reins back and really understanding what's under the hood. And you've been really instrumental in that process for me. So Sean, on behalf of everyone with the Crypto Tribe live crew here, we thank you for joining us today and for sharing your wealth of wisdom and knowledge and experience with us. It's truly invaluable. And for those of you watching, please look in the show notes. We'll have access to Sean's Digital Business Masters course. I'm taking it right now. It's a game changer. It's really, as you can hear from him, it's about education and empowerment. So I definitely highly recommend plugging into Sean. I think that's $129. And for free, though, he has a lot of access to content where you can just start to learn, just start to lay those foundations. So Sean, I know you have to run. Thank you, brother. I have a tremendous amount of respect and appreciation for you, and we'll have you back on real soon.
No, thank you, Jay. Absolute pleasure to see you as always, and everybody else. Real nice to meet you all. We look forward to working in the good of what the Thrive Tribe represents. We're totally attuned, Jay and I look forward to spreading this knowledge further and wider, and you doing the same ultimately with your colleagues and friends and family, whoever you feel this will resonate with. We've got it covered because we've got the structures now to do it. So always a pleasure.